Do you believe in automatic writing? Do you think that spirits can write through a medium's hand? Well, a study on this was published in the Public Library of Science Online in November of 2012. It was done by the Thomas Jefferson University and by the University of São Paulo in Brazil. And to the surprise of some people, there's a lot of interesting findings that suggest that exactly what happens is that spirits write through the medium's hand. They studied 10 mediums who were either beginners or advanced people in what's called psychography, which is another name for automatic writing. They did SPECT scans on them, and then they looked at what the activity of certain areas of the brain was like. And then what they found was that the experienced people who did automatic writing had much different brain patterns than people who were newbies at it. They found lower levels of activity in certain areas of the brain that were associated with automatic kind of writing and people who were experienced, and they found a different pattern in those people who were less so. So what they found is that one of the areas of the brain, the hippocampus, which is involved in this, was active, but they also found that there was a change in the frontal lobes. The frontal lobes is what's involved with reasoning and with language and with planning ahead. And in the mediums who had a lot of experience, that part of the brain was almost turned off. But then in the less experienced mediums who were involved with this, there was more activity there. So it could be that the SPECT scan is telling us something that as you practice this and get more engaged in it and have a lot of experience with it, that there are changes in the brain in the SPECT scan that suggest that this is a real thing. So we need to keep our minds open. You know, there's a split between science and spirituality that's been huge ever since the apple fell on Newton's head. And we got the idea in science, and particularly the science of medicine, that things that we didn't understand we could just throw out, and spirituality was certainly one of those. But we have to keep in mind that it doesn't mean that it's not there or that it doesn't have some kind of action that's important. We need to be doing scientific experiments if we want to try and prove that too, because in reality what we have is a spectrum on one hand where we have science, and in the same spectrum on the other side is spirituality. And every experience that we ever have involves both science and spirituality in a perfect blend. But we as human beings don't have to understand how that works. We just need to do what's called an outcome study and see if there are changes when we do things that we don't understand that are positive. So for example, if you had a black box and you had a pile of nickels and you put a nickel in the black box and a quarter came out the other end, you may never figure out how that works, but you know that you can make some money if you do it that way. Well, it's the same thing when we're looking at how the world works, and that science and spirituality don't have to be understood. Certainly spirituality doesn't have to be understood. It's something you just know. So for the business of automatic writing, I think that it hasn't been solved as a definite answer one way or the other, but there's data now that's showing that there's something to it, and that we should be paying attention to these kinds of things if we want to benefit from the kinds of things that maybe spirits will write through a medium's hand.